So welcome to this morning's discussion on the lip reader. So observations, what do you guys want to talk about?
So I'm a part of the Seinfeld group, so I might take a little bit of the lead here. To no one's surprise, I had Elaine up on the table again today.
Okay.
My personal thoughts about her today was that she might have social anxiety. The differential for that is you would need to check for first panic disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, or autism spectrum disorder, not including, of course, that you would need to check for any drug influences or any kind of medical influences. But I felt that she might have social anxiety today because she was avoiding the cab driver. Specifically, we could see that it was a repeat avoidance. She said in the opening of the episode that she hated doing it and that she did not want to take it if possible. She was afraid of being exposed to possible scrutiny. She did not want to tell the cab driver, like, hey, I just don't really feel like talking today. She tried to come up with a lie. She tried to stick with the lie. Did not work out for her in the end. And then she also was worried about being negatively evaluated both by the cab driver and saying, like, hey, I don't really want to talk to you today. I kind of want to be left alone. And then also to her friends, when she was explaining her distaste for taking the cab driver, she was like, oh, like how good I am about these things. Like, oh, what did she say specifically? She was like, oh, I never, like, hit the birds. I just, like, yell at them. No, the squirrels. She's like, I don't know those things at squirrels. And she doesn't keep her hair up in the movie. She keeps it down to not bother people. So saying, like, look, I'm a good person. I'm not, like, trying to avoid scrutiny, just saying, like, she does not like being in this specific social situation, and she tries her best to avoid it.
Yeah, and I think for the three different conditions that you had named or listed, number one, Elaine really does not demonstrate any signs or symptoms of having had a panic attack, right? So a panic disorder is defined as recurrent panic attacks that are clinically significant, right? So an individual endures the attack with significant anxiety or maybe as a change in behavior. Easy example of that would be avoidance behavior. But the panic attacks themselves are indistinguishable on shelf exams from an acute MI or an acute heart attack. All right. So on a shelf exam, for a standardized exam, anyone who presents with a low clinical index of suspicion, somebody who's younger, who has a heart attack, and then in that case vignette is provided zero evidence, that is the reader, the student, zero evidence of myocardial damage, right? So there's serum markers, EKG. That's a panic attack, right? And when you have frequent recurrent panic attacks that become clinically significant, then you have panic disorder. None of the above seem to apply to Elaine, not only in the lip reader, but in even previous or subsequent episodes. Body dysmorphic disorder, you mentioned negative evaluation. The individual who struggles with body dysmorphic disorder, which is a condition that was originally, at least in the last edition of the DSM, in a chapter related to somatic symptom disorder, has been since moved 2013 to a chapter of obsessive compulsive and related disorder. So BDD is a disorder related to OCD, where the negative evaluation is due to an imagined defect in appearance. Right? There's no such thing here. Although in a previous episode, and I'm blanking on the title right now, she does believe or comes to believe that she has a big head and that her head is misshaped. So if you combine those episodes, we might want to leave body dysmorphic disorder in our differential only because we're going to look at, I believe it's a previous episode, past psychiatric history. But we would be really taking information from an episode other than the lip reader, which is fine. We could definitely do that. And then finally, autism spectrum is a disorder that has its onset in child or adolescence, or childhood or adolescence. And here we don't see any such case of that whatsoever for Elaine, even in previous episodes. So social anxiety disorder seems to be a working diagnosis here, a provisional diagnosis. Now, having looked at the differential, and the differential is even broader, focusing now on the actual condition of social anxiety disorder, what is the definition here? What is it that we would want to ask our patient? If Elaine Bennis were here, what would we ask her?
So my understanding of it is that someone who goes out of their way to avoid social situations because they're fear of being especially scrutinized by the people around them. So I would ask her personally, like, oh, what is your experience in social situations? How do you feel? Is there anything that you avoid? Things along that line to see, like, oh, is she avoiding social situations because of fear, or is it because of a distaste for them?
Yeah, it is the social situation itself that invokes the fear. And whether it's in psychotherapy or even during an initial assessment where social anxiety disorder is high in your differential, you really, as a clinician, should investigate the fear. Right? And hopefully on a case when you get in a shelf exam, that information is provided to you. And if the fear is the social situation itself, social anxiety disorder would be your single best answer. What is the more common example here? Which may or may not be on the shelf. It depends if the test writer, the question writer, wants to spoon feed you or not. What's the most common example of a social situation invoking fear?
Public speaking.
Yeah. Matter of fact, it's so common that in the DSM-5, the current revision, there's a performance subtype. Right. Any other observations for Elaine?
Not that I could think of. I thought social anxiety disorder fit the best. Because it really, surrounding her this episode, I felt it was just like the fear of being judged and not wanting to speak to someone in the specific social situation. So that's why I was leaning towards, social anxiety, not even generalized anxiety. I was like, this is the best.
I was just thinking, like, because we keep saying fear, I was like, did she have a fear of socializing with a cab, or you just don't like to talk to your Uber drivers? Because I don't. And I'm a real social person, but, like, when you're in that drive, you're, like, burned out. Like, you're either going back home or maybe going to work, and you don't want to talk, or you don't want to, because they talk a lot. So I was like, how can you tell if she was having, if it's a fear of, like, the socializing, or you just don't want to talk to the cab driver?
Yep. Now, the way I set the scenario up, I kind of led you in a specific direction, but you're bringing us right back to what our usual starting point should be, and that is irrespective of why the individual made an office appointment with you, often referred to as the chief complaint, you should actually frame that as being normal, okay, until it's not. Right, and then you go into your differential diagnosis from there. So can't disagree with you. It could be normal behavior, and that's really where we always should start the discussion. Mm-hmm. What ultimately is it revealed, or what other information are we missing pertaining to this character that really broadens the differential even more? What does she do?
She pretends to be deaf.
Yeah. So and what does that allow us to further discuss?
Malingering.
Yeah. And what's the condition related to malingering that we also have to discuss?
Conversion disorder, fictitious disorder.
Yeah, conversion too. But that comes, I think, lower in a differential when we understand that she has made a conscious effort to deceive or misrepresent. And the conscious component allows us then to rule against conversion and even somatic symptom disorder, and focus really on malingering versus factitious disorder, because both are hallmark, both are defined through one's conscious effort to deceive or misrepresent.
That's what I was kind of leaning towards when I saw it, only because I did think that was a bit extreme, because what I do is I pretend I don't know English, or if they speak Spanish, I pretend I don't know Spanish, which I do. Because I don't think I would fake being deaf. I thought that was a bit extreme.
And again, normal behavior, of course, we're bringing it into the clinical setting for teaching purposes. So I'm not ready to diagnose my student as having either factitious or malingering. That's normal behavior. But for purposes of this being a teaching didactic, we do need to pathologize to reach specific teaching objectives. Malingering versus factitious, how do you differentiate the two? So these are going to be choices C and D on your exam. How do you choose C versus D?
Malingering is when you want something out of pretending to be sick, and factitious disorder, there's no really clear goal you're trying to attain.
Right, the motivation / gain / reward, right? And the reward for malingering is external. The reward for factitious is internal or unconscious. And here it looks like Elaine is probably has an external reward. She doesn't want to talk to them. She doesn't want to be bothered. So maybe malingering. If we were going to, in the artificial nature of an exam where we have to choose A, B, C, or D. Characters other than Elaine you want to discuss this morning? We're talking about the lip reader.
Well, before we move on too quick from Elaine, if that's okay, there was the other point where she got the cab driver the tickets to go to the concert that blew out his ear. I was wondering if that also might be a sign of like some kind of malicious intent or irritation somewhere. Because she was like, oh, here you go.
It's interesting knowing Elaine. I think it's a fair discussion. However, the other part of me wants to say that if anyone ever gifts you Metallica tickets, it's never malicious. But that's my own bias.
Right. Okay.
Other thoughts?
I was having a bit of a hard time with this episode, honestly. My only other thought would be George and his girlfriend breaking up with him, something going on there. I was thinking maybe that could be some kind of abandonment issue or some kind of self-worth issue, because he was so attached to her and saying, like, oh no, you don't get to break up with me that way, that's my thing. And then also being so, enraptured with saying, like, oh, what is she talking to this person about, going as far as to confront her in a public setting saying, oh, you're doing this with this person.
Yeah, I mean, this is a recurring theme with George. Again, one's strength of relationship or one's relationship, intimate relationships as an adult are strongly shaped by their initial interactions in childhood. And we've met Mr. and Mrs. Costanza, so we do know the origins of everything that plays out with George and his love life. And this is just another example of that. And what's interesting is that even though Elaine has her own history, especially related to her father, who's an alcoholic, at least the etiology of conditions like factitious do merge with this discussion now of George and his early childhood experiences. That is, what causes George to act the way he does and have that self-identity issue would be this similar childhood experiences or adverse childhood experiences that would cause, quote unquote, conditions like factitious disorder. So we see a merging of these two storylines, these plot devices for these characters. What else going on with George here?
This question in general
Yeah.
for autistic disorder, is it more of like wanting to gain attention by doing acting like you're not, like you're sick or like you're deaf? Is that more for attention wise, or is that more just to do it?
I'm gonna cop out and say it's multifactorial because
Okay.
it's very hard to have a single best answer, even though we make you guys think like that in exams. But in human behavior, it's so complex. But yes, that could be playing a major role here. And again, if we see any other evidence of, for instance, George or Elaine for that matter, doing things, saying things that would draw attention to themselves, and that practice becomes clinically significant, it results in clinically significant distress or impairment for George, then we'd have to look at early childhood experiences and see where this came from. There's an easy timeline here, although, again, people and human behavior rarely fit a nice linear timeline. But in the textbook, we do see situations in which children will be the object of everybody's attention. That's normal. And when they're not, they want to. That's normal when you're 4, right? And at some point, it's usually the parents and then the parental extenders will bestow that attention onto their son, their daughter. And at some point, that child will realize, I am good, right? This healthy infantile narcissism. I understand that I am at the center of the universe. That's the way parents make us feel. That gets internalized. And we no longer need, now it doesn't happen overnight, but at some point we'll no longer need that external validation. Unless there are adverse childhood experiences. And that could prolong. And it could prolong into adulthood. That's what we see here.
Could that go into personality disorder?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a risk factor for especially the cluster B personality disorders. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to, that certainly intertwined in all of this, that I think is highlighted in this episode, and perhaps even the title, is the role of verbal versus nonverbal communication, and how important it is to understand that the majority of the way we communicate to others is nonverbally, right? Some estimates up to like 70-80% of communication is nonverbal. Right, and here we go. in this episode, Larry David really puts a twist on this, a comedic twist, in that the verbal communication is so off base that it's misinterpreted and it becomes obviously its own problem. Right? But nonverbal communication, and that is consistent with conditions like factitious disorder, where individuals gain some form of attention, especially when imposed on another, that fills a subconscious need, right? A secondary gain. So that's something to consider here too.
But it almost feels like with Elaine in this episode, she's looking to get the attention off of herself if we were going to be going with factitious disorder. Like she's trying to say, like, don't talk to me, leave me alone. I can't have this interaction with you.
Oh yeah, no, Elaine is not factitious. Elaine's behavior allows us to use this particular episode and her character in this episode to teach aspects related to. She doesn't have factitious disorder here, no. She just opens the door for us to discuss those topics. Final thoughts or any other characters you want to discuss?
Like the actual lip reader. I just thought it was kind of weird that they were kind of using her for their own gain. I wondered, like, does he even like her then, or does he like the fact that she can do this? And then, because I remember one scene, I forgot who it was, came bursting into the apartment. Oh, I heard you have a lip reader. Like it's some sort of device or something. So I wonder, does he even like her, or just like the fact that she can do that? That's impressive.
Because we also noticed that the reason he was initially interested in her was because he was looking at her.
Remember, one of the ways in which clinicians make sense of human behavior and even abnormal human behavior is through the 3 Ps, right? And I think your point allows us to review this again and then kind of refocus what you just identified within what predisposes, precipitates, and perpetuates behavior. To your point, I think that Jerry, as a precipitant, what got him to be attracted to this individual was physical. He admired her from a distance. I don't think it was that she filled some need for him or allowed him to gain an advantage or anything like that. I don't think that was true. However, what precipitates behaviors biopsychosocially often are not the same things, not the same factors that perpetuate those behaviors. And your observation is in that perpetuating column, right? So the reason why he wants to meet her is different from the reasons why he continues to go out with her. They're much different. And that's where your observation is more of a perpetuating factor than it would be a precipitant. All right, we'll leave it here. We're going to ask folks at home following us on Zoom, log off, log back on for table rounds, and we'll see everybody back on Instagram at noon. Thank you.